Step in with.
Appreciate the time here. Go ahead and finish. Okay, everybody have a Bible?
Yes, we do.
I need 3 volunteers.
I'm gonna have it. I'll volunteer.
Wonderful, got 1 volunteer.
Is it actually reading?
What am I doing?
Is it acting or reading?
Both.
No, never mind, never mind.
It's reading, but bonus points to after that too.
I'll be your volunteer.
Okay, I've got 2 volunteers.
No,
You already spoke up.
You're
You can act it out, you just have to.
I will act it out. I'll do all the parts.
yeah, I would do it. How are you doing all 3?
What?
How are you gonna act out?
Just like walking in a circle.
How are you gonna act out walking on the wall? He walks on ice.
Okay, we're just reading, no acting. I need 2 volunteers.
I want to read it.
Huh?
Oh.
How much am I reading?
Wait, can I?
Okay,
Yeah.
I got 2 volunteers. 1 more, going once, going twice, Colt. Thank you. Okay, so, Trent,
You're already in the loop.
I need you to look up Romans 10, 1 through 4, and then hold your spot there. Colt, you've got Matthew 5, 17 through 19,
Matthew's right here.
and
Yeah, for sure.
rules. You have Matthew 22. Yeah, 22.
Chapter 10.
So from here to.
Yep, perfect. Nice, good job.
Alright, so before we get started, who can recap what we've been learning over the past 2 weeks? Does anybody remember the little chart that we had on the whiteboard? It was.
To go
on
up
the
and
top.
down.
Yep, we had the
crosses.
and then the crosses, and then the, we called it, I'm gonna call it submissive behaviors.
It was like there was performing and pretending.
Pretending, that's what it was, yep. And performing was what? Like in one quick sentence, what was that about?
Being a religious nut job.
So trying to follow all the rules, trying to be
Yeah,
better,
being
holier
like
than everybody else.
being basically a psycho when it comes to all of it.
So biblically, you always think of like the Pharisees or something
Yeah.
like that.
Putting it on us.
Or maybe the Christian school kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the bottom side, the pretending, what was that about? You weren't here, were you?
No.
So we're just helping Trent figure out what we've been studying.
Well, we're going to here now, hopefully we can recap 3 weeks in like 5 minutes. So the bottom side for pretending that was about the fact that we are on our own, completely incapable of doing everything that we need to do. And if we're incapable of doing it, why should we even try? Right?
Yeah.
If God has forgiven us for all our sins, then do we really need to take responsibility for our own lives if Christ's already taken care of it? Which is obviously not the right mindset. And right in the middle, we had the cross, which was the balancing point, so to speak, between both ends of the spectrum, which says God has saved you, but he's also redeemed you. So the old way of living, which was on the bottom, you don't have to do anymore. That's not who you are. And in the top, where you were striving, you don't have to do that anymore because God has taken care of. So what we're talking about today is the law, which we can call the law of Moses. Does anybody know what that is?
Moses?
Moses, the law of Moses?
I know what Moses is. I don't know what the law is.
What do you carry down?
Cool.
All the Ten Commandments and all the laws are given with them.
Yep. Grace said it too. Good job. So we have the Ten Commandments.
Pretty impressed, you can read your handwriting. I can't read mine.
Can you read mine?
I can read yours.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
I don't know if it, Jordan's writing it or if it's kind of correcting it as he's
See,
going,
that's what I
It's like
did,
you're
you're
doing
gonna be
calligraphy.
correcting.
but it's
Yeah.
very fancy.
Yes, it looks very fancy.
Do the stripey pen.
Is that like you're doing it or is it you write the
Well,
letter?
he's
and-
writing it, but
Yeah,
it's
I'm writing
doing the,
When I rehearsed this, I did it with my finger, and I could hardly read that. So it's not a pen for you guys. You're welcome.
Okay.
So it's not editing it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's editing. It seems like it's just his hands.
He just has really good handwriting.
fancy,
Super smart, right?
fancy pants McGee.
I don't remember where it was. So,
The Ten Commandments.
Ten Commandments. Off the top of your head, what are the Ten Commandments? That's good. I don't remember my student.
You know what the first one is?
Have no other gods before me,
That's a good one.
and then no idols.
Those two, in themselves, are a lot harder than they look like.
Mm.
Because having something as a god in place of the god could be as big as worshiping somebody else, like worshiping an idol, or it could be as simple as dwelling or giving more of your attention and more of your energy to a video game than to actual worship. It's a lot bigger than it looks like, and it's really hard to do. So we know what the law is. Do you know what I mean by grace? Cool.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, exactly. So this would be, the bottom side of the chart, so Jesus is taking care of everything for us. So this, what I'm doing here, is gonna be a different way of giving the same chart that we had over the past 3 weeks. So the law would be performing, right? And then grace could equal pretending, or I'm gonna say submission. And then right in the middle here is our cross. And this is where we want to be. So how exactly do you balance the law that says do this, do this, do this, don't do that, be like this, with grace that says Jesus is all of that for you? How do you walk the line like John Cash?
What?
I thought you of all people would
No.
It's an old country song. Anyway. Walking the line is never an easy thing. You take one wrong step and you're in the wrong, in the grave. So, we're gonna start with our 3 verses. So we have a section in Romans, section in Matthew, and then another section in Matthew. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do some kind of like an evidence board. So we're gonna try and find the magic link between the two. And we're gonna do it by comparing what we know about the law with what we know about grace. Okay? So, Trent, you could read Romans for us. 10, 1 through 4.
Brothers, my heart desire and prayer to God for them is that they may be saved. For I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge, for being ignorant of the righteousness of God and seeking to establish their own, they did not submit to God's righteousness, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes.
So what do you think you're trying to communicate in those verses?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like just off the top of your head, what's your first impression?
they do like talking about righteousness.
You do. What is righteousness? So in this context, they're saying they were trying to create their own righteousness. Does that sound right?
Mhm.
Which means they were trying to do it themselves. They were trying to be everything they needed to be by themselves. This kind of righteousness has a special name. It is called self-righteousness. And I meant to ask you guys, but I think y'all can agree that kind of falls into the law category, because we're doing it ourselves and not when Jesus helps us, right? Cool. Do you read to me Matthew 5, what was it, 17 through 19?
Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commandments and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven.
Can you summarize that in 1 or 2 sentences? What are they saying?
Basically, if you just pretend that the law isn't there anymore, and that doesn't apply, then you will still be saved, but it is sinful to do that. Extremely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, don't do that.
That makes sense. So, where should we put that, under the law or under grace? It's kind of fits under both, because it's talking about
How the grace works.
right, how you're saved no matter what you do. What's that?
More grace than law.
Yeah.
Hey,
But the
Jordan.
only thing is, if you go with the more grace than law, a lot of people look at it and go, well, then I don't need to do it. So that could be the tension point on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jordan.
Okay, go back, please.
It can.
I was just noticing, it said if you set aside but one of these. It's not saying like if you throw away all of them completely, then like to the wayside, like it's making sure that you still realize that these are all of these are important. That's why there's 10 of them. That's why I put all 10 of these on this stone.
both, because like Mark said, if you forsake it, then it's sinful. But at the same time, it shows that you're still gonna be saved, like Pope said. The salvation isn't about what you do. We're gonna have to come back to that one, 'cause I don't know where to put that either. Grace, or sorry, not Grace, Jules. Can you read Matthew 22?
Yeah,
What is it, 36 through 40?
through 40.
Yep.
Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord with all your God with all your heart and all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbors as yourself. On these two commandments depend on the law and prophets.
Can you repeat that last sentence?
Oh wait, that was 40, never mind.
No, you're supposed to be 40.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Can you repeat it?
On these two commandments depend on the law and the prophets, all the law.
And these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. What does that
It's like writing it in bold.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
mean? So,
To obey like the commandments and
well, let's rewind for a second. So let's take what Colt just read. It says, if you forsake even one of these,
yeah.
then you're in trouble. But then what you just said, it says the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. What Colt is saying implies that in the eyes of God, there is no worse sin, because they all separate you from Him.
Yeah.
But what you're saying obviously means that there is definitely a better commandment. Jesus himself said that. So what does this tell us about law versus grace? Let me ask this question. Who is God?
The Lord loves you and He just wants you to love Him still.
What's the key word there?
Lord,
Lord.
No.
No.
There you go. God is love. It's probably the most straightforward verse, or straightforward statement in the entire Bible. God is love. So, let me put that
that's
over
pretty
here.
good.
What's that?
That's pretty great.
I think so. And then if we take what you read, it says to love the Lord your God with your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Basically means to just love, right? Which, of course, is what Jesus did for us when He died. He loved us, even though
He
we
loved us
were.
so much that He died on the cross.
Exactly. Which means that no matter what we do, He's still gonna love us.
Yeah.
That might not be an excuse, but it is still a truth. So, I'm gonna hold on to these verses and come back to them later, but I wanna think about another story. Remember the rich young ruler who came up to Jesus, said, Lord, I have done all of these commandments. I have kept them since I was young. What must I do to enter the kingdom of heaven? Dominic, what did Jesus say?
Do not know.
Do not know. That is okay. Jesus said to go and sell all his possessions and follow me. The rich young ruler did not do that. This story isn't about the possessions. It's about the fact, what?
Following Him.
Following him. but also the fact that the rich young ruler valued his possessions more than Jesus. He valued what he had done himself more than he valued God, which of course means he was following the law, but God was trying to get him to acknowledge grace. And that still kind of leaves us on either end of the spectrum, but not on the line. So I'm going to blank.
Let me know if I can help out at all too.
It'll come to me in a second. So, I was visiting my family this past weekend. I was telling my dad about what I was going to be talking about today. And he said, basically, with what Jesus has done for us, we don't have to follow the law anymore. Before you let that go to your head, remember what you read, friend, in Romans, yes,
10.
1:4.
yep, I remember that you read it, but I can't remember what you read. Could you read that for me one more time?
Yeah, we found it.
No, wait. No, Colt actually, mine is 5, that's what I'm. Sorry.
Correct, Matthew 5.
Matthew 5, 1 through 4.
No, 1 through 4. Alright. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went to the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are those poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And it goes on like that.
Never mind, 17 through 19.
What the heck was what is it? That's the first thing, right?
Yeah, I know, read it again.
Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. The law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commandments and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven.
So, what does it mean to say that he has not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it? How do you fulfill the law?
By doing it.
Not
Doing it,
commit the crime.
maybe. Maybe. Let's,
I mean, he followed all the laws.
right. Well, let's revisit what the law is. So, obviously, we know that by ourselves, we can't follow the law to the letter, to the standard that we were supposed to be. Jesus said, all have fallen short of the glory of God. Missed the mark, not at the standard. So the law is basically the standard of what we could be. Standard of what Jesus is. Jesus came, he fulfilled the law. Of course, he is the standard. He is the picture of what the law is supposed to represent. The law represents Jesus. The law isn't Jesus. It just points to Jesus. So when Jesus came and he died, he gave to us everything that we need to fulfill the law just like him. What did Jesus do? Throughout Jesus' entire ministry, his primary focus, his main thing was to love your neighbor. Like Jules read, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor. He said it over and over. If someone asks you to walk with them 1 mile, go with them 2. So when I told my dad what I was going to be talking about tonight, he said to imagine Ben had a gun. Would you shoot somebody with that gun?
No,
No, why not?
you could never kill someone. Well, unless you were to shoot them in the arm or something. Like,
That would still kill him.
That would do
He's probably bleeding.
I wouldn't shoot any of you.
Well, it depends on which gun you have. A shotgun or a pistol.
We're getting a little bit off track.
I don't care what it is. It's a piece of metal going into someone. It's
It's
not
not gonna hurt.
I wouldn't shoot any of you. Why? It's against the law. That's not why I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't shoot any of you because I love you. Right? Simple as that. So the law has always pointed to love. Everything in the law can be fulfilled through love, through who Jesus is, through the character that Jesus gave to us. So this line here, this line can easily be identified as love. When you walk in love, you fulfill both the law and grace. If you're doing something and you wonder, is this right? Is this what Jesus would want? Ask yourself, am I doing this because of love, or am I doing this because of fear or hate? And if the answer is love, then you'll be in the right every time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So your mission then isn't to perform, because God has that taken care of for us. And it's not submission or pretending. Because love, we determined was the line in the middle, but love is also what the law pointed to. Meaning the law is part of love. And love is also the defining factor of grace. Which means that the line isn't quite so small anymore. Because the law is love, and the grace is love. And the closer you get to Jesus, and the more you walk in love, the easier this is going to be. And it's not going to be so much of like a checklist. Like I have to not follow an idol. I have to not play too many video games. I have to not get annoyed at my siblings. It becomes more of like a second nature. More of more of a
Just happened.
it just happens. Yeah.
More natural.
Yeah.
There you go. bottom line is, the law points to love, grace is love. It's all united, it's all the same thing. Jesus is love, Jesus gave us love. It's not our love, but Jesus loving through us. Which means, go ahead.
What's one way that you guys can walk in love with someone from school or sports?
Like a team, like football team, baseball team, supporting them.
Are there people in your school who you can probably tell?
Do you have something great?
No.
Okay, you lean forward like you did.
Who you can tell might not get as much love, might be a little neglected? I know when I was in high school, there definitely was.
Any other questions? I think that's all that I have for you. Dr. Mark, would you mind opening up that prayer?
Sure. God, thanks so much for really loving us, and I thank you that it's deeper than we understand. And I thank you that that changes us and allows us to actually give that kind of love to other people. So help us this week to understand more about how much you love us. Help us to understand how that really fulfills, that's really what you want from us, that's what the whole law is about. And then help us to actually overflow into the lives of others and be able to show love to them in maybe at school or maybe at someone that we meet at work, or maybe someone that we meet that we don't even really know, but we run into them. God, help us to have kind of loving ways to be able to communicate and to care about people, even when that's hard. Because we know sometimes love doesn't seem like just approval. So help us with all this, I pray. Thanks so much for letting us look at your word tonight. Be with us this week. We love you. We pray in your name. Amen. If you got time to help us with shares, that'd be fantastic. We'll reset all of those.